Other guy calls me up, and his name is Dwight Collins. And I say to Dwight, Dwight wants to break a record. What kind of record, Dwight? He wants the fastest human-powered crossing of the Atlantic Ocean. I say, well, how are you going to do this? Are you going to row? And he goes, no, 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 we're not going to row because your arms are the weakest part of your body. You want to row with your legs. So how are you going to do that? A recumbent bicycle. So he created this craft, this pedal-powered, I don't know what you call it, just pedal-powered boat that is built so it could do a complete 360 and still pop up. And so Dwight comes to us and looks for sponsorship, and we managed to get Moet and Chandon, a champagne company. Well, it made sense because you use champagne to christen a boat with, and you also use champagne to celebrate. At the end of your trip, you use you pour it all over yourself when you've achieved this great achievement. So I said to him, well, where have you taken this this ship, boat, rowboat thing of yours? And he said, well, we sailed around Long Island Sound. And I said, well, why don't you go a little bit further to try this out and take your partner with you? And so there's Dwight. There's his recumbent bicycle mechanism for this. And there's Bob Wells on the right. And they learned a very important thing when they did their pedal-powered journey. I suggested that they go to Cape Cod. They learned something very important. This guy was going to have no part of this trip after going 200 miles in this pedal-powered boat. And the reason was they didn't have enough money for sponsorship for a chase boat. The chase boat would have carried the food that they needed this. So without the chase boat, they didn't have room for food, and they didn't have any margin of error without the chase boat. So Bob, gone. Dwight continues to do his trip. He decides to continue forward. He takes Bob's space, the space Bob was sitting in, he fills it with all kinds of free-dried food, and he succeeds. He breaks the record for a human-powered crossing in 92 days, solo. And he's covered on TV. It's a great project, and it gets great exposure for Moet and Chandon. So happy ending to that story. I covered it in the book. This is Reed Stowe. Reed is an artist, kind of a new agey, kind of free thinker. Reed wants to do something that's never been done before in the history of mankind. He wants to be at sea for 1,000 days without resupply. So he leaves with his girlfriend. They leave New York Harbor in this, a 72-foot sloop. They leave New York Harbor. Reed and the girlfriend. Did I say that already? Right. Day 15, he hits a tanker, and it breaks his bowsprit. Day 15, but that's nothing. Day 300, his girlfriend is getting violently seasick. Day 300, only it's not seasickness, it's morning sickness. She gets pregnant. And at day 305, she's got to leave the boat. So they send a boat out. He's off of Perth, in Perth, Australia. They send a boat out to pick her up. She gets on the boat, waves goodbye. Reed, what does he do? Stays the course. Reed's still on the boat. Day 305, she's off. Day 450, she has his son in Queens, New York, Darshan, little boy. He's never seen the boy. He's still out there. Day 450, the kid's born. Day 657, he breaks the record for the longest sea voyage in history, 657, set by a Brit by the name of John Sanders. He breaks the record, day 657, still out there. Last month, about January 16th, they have a big celebration in New York without Reed, because he's still out there. Day 1,000, they celebrate his 1,000th day at sea without resupply. Without resupply. His computer is broken. He's just blogging by sat phone, dictating the sat phone, and Reed is out there day 1,000. Now he's not coming in, even though that was his goal. He's deciding to wait until better weather, so he's coming in on June 17th in New York Harbor. Meanwhile, he's doing things like this. He's tracing the outline of a heart in the middle of the sea. He's doing the outline of a turtle in the middle of the sea. Did he get sponsorship? He wrote a letter to NASA because he calls this an analogous trip to Mars, to a journey to Mars. NASA writes back, "Dear Mrs. Stowe, very interesting project you have. Please keep us posted." Not exactly the response he was looking for from NASA. And so he's kind of pieced together in-kind sponsorship. Remember, there's two kinds of sponsorship, cash and in-kind. I say in the book, don't spend 3 months trying to get a pair of socks. you got to start with cash. So there's Reed, there's his girlfriend before he left, Sonia, and I encourage you to read his latest blogs sent by sat phone at 1000days.net on the web so you can learn more about him. So why would companies sponsor a guy like Reed? Why would companies want to sponsor any polar explorer? And they do that because of publicity, because of exposure. Demonstrate product performance in tough conditions and get into the New York Times, get into National Geographic, and that's why a lot of time is spent on patches and signage. There's Will Steger. We talked about Will. Will is right there. Will has just completed a 3,700-mile trek across Antarctica. When you usually hear about somebody skiing to the South Pole, well, if Antarctica is a big stingray, and you visited the tail, the Antarctic Peninsula, well, think about the whole rest of the continent, and from north to south is the short way, and that's where most people ski, that route. Amundsen skied the short way. Will Steger went from the tail to the head, 3,700 miles. He did it in 7 months. It was an $11 million expedition, and at the end of it, instead of getting a warm shower, they have to unfurl the banner because that's how the game is played. His sponsors all want to get that kind of exposure. What's unusual about this tent? This is Mary Scott. Mary, what's unusual about this tent?
The big logo.
The big logo. On which side of the tent?
The inside.
The inside of the tent. And I say in my talk, some smart marketing guy or woman, not me, Mary used to work for the North Face, decided, well, okay, they're going to take all these photographs. Let's put the logo on the inside of the tent. Duh. Made a lot of sense to do that. And here's another signature photo with Will Steger. Again, Thinsulate logo, in a tent, sled dog outside. This appeared in USA Weekend magazine. So Will Steger answered the so what question going to the North Pole. Will Steger answered the so what question, longest human-powered and dog sled expedition, longest non-mechanized expedition across Antarctica. And I talked briefly about this gentleman, arguably the greatest blind athlete in the world. Eric Weinmeier answered the so what question when he summited Mount Everest, and he did it with the aid of other team members, bringing him up there, getting great exposure for Mountain Hardwear and Allegra, which is an antihistamine, which he actually was taking. Very often when you're looking for a sponsorship, think about what you use already. What kind of gear are you going to need on your trip? And make a list of targeted sponsors for your dream trip. Sponsors want publicity.